Have you ever heard of an object so cursed, so malevolent, that even the bravest men refuse to touch it? A wooden wine cabinet that carries with it whispers of a restless spirit, a being that does not die, does not forgive, and does not forget. This is not the plot of a horror film. This is a story pulled from estate sales, newspaper clippings, and whispered accounts from those who dared to own it. They call it the Dybbuk Box. It began, as many horrors do, with innocence. In 2001, a man named Kevin Mannis walked into a Portland, Oregon estate sale. The house belonged to a woman who had recently passed away at the age of 103. Her granddaughter told Kevin that the old woman had been a Holocaust survivor. She had fled Poland during the war, carrying with her only a few personal belongings. Among them was a small, ornately carved wooden wine cabinet. The granddaughter's words were sharp, almost like a warning. My grandmother kept this in her sewing room. She called it a Dybbuk Box. She said it was never, ever to be opened. Kevin, a furniture refinisher by trade, didn't think much of it. He thought he had stumbled upon an interesting antique. He bought the cabinet along with a few other items for a fair price. The granddaughter hesitated as she handed it over. "Please," she whispered, "don't open it." Of course, curiosity is the first step into darkness. Kevin brought the cabinet back to his shop. The moment it arrived, strange things began. The lights flickered. Tools went missing. Cold drafts pushed through the air, even when doors were locked tight. He dismissed it as coincidence. But when he opened the cabinet, what he found inside would haunt him forever. Inside were several strange objects: a small granite slab with Hebrew carvings, a lock of blonde hair tied with a string, a lock of dark brown hair tied the same way, a golden wine cup, a dried rosebud, and a single candle holder with 4 octopus-shaped legs. Objects that seemed random yet carried a weight, as if each piece belonged to a ritual interrupted. That night, Kevin dreamed of something he could not explain. A shadow, darker than dark, pressing against his chest. A figure of a woman with sunken eyes and a twisted mouth. When he awoke, he had scratches on his arms. Over the next few weeks, Kevin gave the box to his mother as a birthday gift, not believing it to be anything more than a strange antique. She opened it that same day. Minutes later, she collapsed from a sudden stroke. Though she survived, she lost her ability to speak. When Kevin visited her in the hospital, she pointed at him and at the box and painfully scrawled a single word on a piece of paper: hate. From that moment forward, the Dybbuk Box's curse began to reveal itself. Every person who came into contact with it reported nightmares of the same hag-like woman, a figure that crouched at the foot of their beds, pulling the breath from their lungs. Kevin himself experienced glass shattering in his hands, mysterious smells of ammonia filling his shop, and the sound of something growling just outside the edge of his vision. He tried to give it away once to a couple, once to a sister, once to friends. Each time, it returned to him. Each time, the new owners reported the same: nightmares, illness, fear that seeped into their very bones. The cabinet seemed to want to be passed on, but never discarded, like it was searching for someone. Kevin grew desperate. He listed it for sale on eBay, writing in his description, "Please don't buy this if you are not prepared to deal with it. This box is haunted." He thought it was a joke, something that would fetch a bit of money from collectors of oddities. But what happened next made headlines. Within days, bids flooded in. Paranormal enthusiasts, skeptics, and thrill seekers all wanted to own the most haunted object in America. The cabinet sold to a college student, and then the stories grew darker. Night terrors, illness, shadow figures, even electronic devices burning out around it. The student begged Kevin to take it back. Kevin refused. But one thing became clear: the Dybbuk Box was not just a story. It was something alive, something ancient, something that followed whoever dared to touch it. And this was only the beginning. The Dybbuk Box left Kevin's hands in June of 2003. The winning bidder on eBay was a young college student named Isif, who thought the entire listing was nothing more than a creative story meant to sell an old piece of furniture. He was curious, skeptical, and convinced he had just purchased a quirky piece of Jewish folklore to decorate his apartment. At first, it was nothing but a conversation piece. Friends would come over, glance at the strange box, and laugh about the warning written in the auction description. But laughter quickly turned into silence. Within days, Isif began experiencing nightmares. He saw an old woman with hollow eyes standing in the corner of his room, just staring. Sometimes she would hover closer, breathing into his ear. He woke up drenched in sweat, his heart pounding so hard it felt like it might tear through his chest. But the terror didn't stop in dreams. One night, the smoke detector in his apartment began going off for no reason. He checked every corner, but there was no smoke, no fire. The moment he walked back into his bedroom, he smelled it, a strong odor of cat urine mixed with rotting flowers. It was coming from the Dybbuk Box. From then on, his electronics began to fail. His laptop crashed, his phone battery drained to zero even after charging, and the lights in his apartment flickered at random. He tried to sleep with the lights on, but the bulb above his bed shattered in the middle of the night, spraying glass across his sheets. Terrified, Isif called Kevin Manis and demanded to return the box. Kevin refused, insisting he had warned him. He reminded him of the eBay listing. "This is haunted. Don't buy if you're not prepared." But by then, it was too late. The box wasn't something you could simply give back. It clung to its new owner like a parasite. Out of desperation, Isif listed it back on eBay. His description was far shorter, but far more chilling. He admitted that the box had ruined his life. He wrote about nightmares, strange smells, and the figure of a woman that followed him. He begged that whoever bought it knew what they were dealing with. The Dybbuk Box was sold again. This time, it went to a Missouri man named Jason Haxton, the director of a medical museum. Unlike the others, Haxton didn't dismiss the stories as superstition. He had an interest in spiritual artifacts and believed the box might carry real, ancient energy. He was prepared, or at least, he thought he was. Almost immediately after bringing the box home, Haxton fell violently ill. His eyes bled without explanation, rashes spread across his body, and he coughed up blood in the middle of the night. Doctors could find nothing wrong with him. And then came the shadows. Jason reported seeing dark, human-shaped figures moving along his walls. His wife complained of hearing voices at night, whispers in languages she couldn't recognize. Objects in their home shifted positions when no one touched them. One night, his son screamed, claiming an old woman was sitting on the edge of his bed. Haxton became obsessed with the box. He began researching Jewish folklore, tracing the idea of the Dybbuk back centuries. In Jewish mythology, a Dybbuk is a restless spirit, often malevolent, that clings to the living, feeding on them until it is exorcised. Survivors of the Holocaust believe some objects carried spirits with them, fragments of lives destroyed in violence. The more he learned, the more convinced he became that the box was exactly what it claimed to be, a Dybbuk's prison. But why was it in America? Why did the Holocaust survivor keep it sealed for decades, never letting it go until she died at 103 years old? And why did her granddaughter insist that it was never to be opened? Haxton tried to contain the box. He built a wooden cabinet lined with 24-karat gold and sealed the Dybbuk Box inside, believing gold had purifying properties. For a while, the activity lessened. His health improved. The shadows quieted, but the nightmares never stopped. He would dream of the same woman, her eyes hollow, her mouth stretched unnaturally wide, her hands reaching for him. Sometimes she would scream without sound. Other times she would whisper in a guttural voice, calling his name. The box had been with him for years, and in that time he began to notice a pattern. Each owner, no matter how skeptical at first, ended up suffering. Some fell ill. Some lost their families. Some claimed to be stalked by the same woman, the same presence. And so the legend of the Dybbuk Box spread. Internet forums buzzed with theories. Paranormal investigators begged Haxton to let them study it. Skeptics dismissed it all as a hoax. But one thing was undeniable. Everyone who came near it had a story. Some whispered that it wasn't just a cursed object, it was a gateway. And if that were true, then what exactly was trying to come through? Jason Haxton thought he could outsmart the Dybbuk Box. He sealed it in gold, locked it away, and prayed the stories would finally end. For a while, it seemed like the darkness around him had quieted. But the thing about cursed objects is that they never really sleep. They only wait. At night, Jason began to notice something strange. Even though the box was sealed inside a protective case, his dreams grew more violent. He no longer just saw the woman in the corner of his room. Now she touched him. Cold, skeletal fingers pressed against his neck, squeezing until he woke up gasping for air. Sometimes he would wake with fresh bruises where her fingers had been. His wife begged him to get rid of it. His children refused to sleep in their own rooms. The smell of ammonia returned, stronger than ever, filling the house at random times. Guests who came over would stop mid-conversation, their noses wrinkling, before nervously asking if there was a dead animal somewhere in the walls. Jason started recording everything. He kept journals, audio logs, even videotapes of the activity. He was determined to prove that the Dybbuk Box wasn't just a story, but something real, something ancient. Word began to spread. By 2004, online forums and blogs were filled with discussions about the box. Paranormal researchers wanted to study it. Skeptics mocked it, calling it an elaborate hoax created by Kevin Manis. But the strange thing was, no matter how many people dismissed it, the stories kept piling up. People who merely touched the box at Haxton's home reported migraines, sudden rashes, and nausea. A few claimed to hear faint whispers in Hebrew or Yiddish, though none of them understood the words. Others swore they saw shadows darting in the corners of their eyes. And then came the media. In 2004, a small television crew asked Jason for permission to feature the Dybbuk Box in a paranormal special. They brought cameras, microphones, and lights into his home. For hours, nothing happened. The crew joked that maybe the box was just a piece of junk after all. But when they played back the audio recordings, their laughter turned cold. On the tapes, beneath their own voices, was another sound. A low, guttural growl, followed by a woman's whisper, repeating one word over and over. Some thought it was shalom, others swore it was Shema, but Jason knew what he heard. It was his own name. The episode never aired. The network pulled it, citing technical difficulties. But Jason knew the truth. The crew didn't want to be associated with something that unexplainable. By 2006, the Dybbuk Box had become a legend. Paranormal investigators wrote articles about it. College students swapped stories about the most haunted object in America. And yet, despite the growing attention, no one had answers. Jason's health worsened. Doctors ran every test imaginable, but they found nothing conclusive. His blood pressure spiked without warning. His skin broke out in hives. His gums bled. He began coughing so violently that at times he thought he might choke to death. His dreams changed too. The woman no longer simply haunted him. She spoke. She told him things she couldn't possibly know, private details about his life, his family, even his childhood. Once, she whispered, "You are mine now." Jason became obsessed with understanding the box's origins. He traced it back to the Holocaust survivor who had first owned it. He learned that she had kept it sealed because she believed it contained a Dybbuk wandering, malicious spirit bound to the box through a ritual. In Jewish folklore, a Dybbuk is a spirit of the dead that clings to the living, feeding on them, tormenting them until it is exorcised. But in this case, the spirit wasn't just clinging, it was caged. The Holocaust survivor had carried the box with her from Poland to America, keeping it hidden, never allowing anyone to open it. She believed the Dybbuk was too dangerous to be released. And now Jason had it. The more he researched, the darker the story became. Survivors of the Holocaust often spoke of spirits, of objects that carried with them the pain and suffering of the millions who perished. Some rabbis whispered about rituals performed during the war, desperate attempts to trap restless souls and keep them from harming the living. What if the Dybbuk Box wasn't just a haunted cabinet? What if it was a prison? Jason reached out to rabbis, mystics, and historians. Most refused to even speak about it. A few told him to bury it deep in the ground and never mention it again. One elderly rabbi gave him a warning he would never forget. Some doors must never be opened. But you have already opened this one. By now, Jason was terrified. He didn't want the box, but he couldn't bring himself to destroy it. The stories said destroying the vessel might release the spirit inside. So he kept it, sealed away, but close enough that it never let him forget it was there. And then came the night that changed everything. Jason awoke at 3:33 a.m. to the sound of footsteps in his hallway. Slow, deliberate, heavy. He grabbed a flashlight and crept out of bed, his heart pounding. He expected to see one of his children awake, but the hallway was empty. At the far end, near the cabinet where the Dybbuk box was kept, the air shimmered. For just a moment, Jason swore he saw her, the woman, pale and rotted, her mouth stretched too wide, her hands clawing toward him. And then she was gone. The box sat quietly in its case, sealed and still. But Jason knew the truth. It wasn't sealed anymore. By the late 2000s, the Dybbuk Box had become a whispered legend in paranormal circles. What started as one man's strange auction listing had turned into something darker, a story that refused to die, feeding on the fear of anyone who came near it. Jason Haxton didn't want the attention. He hadn't asked to become the keeper of the most haunted object in America. But the story grew legs of its own. Blogs and forums dissected every detail. Podcasters invited him for interviews. Paranormal investigators begged him for access. Jason was cautious. He refused most requests, worried that letting others handle the box would only spread its curse. But curiosity has a way of breaking down caution. Eventually, he agreed to allow a small group of researchers into his museum office to see it for themselves. The night they arrived, Jason laid out strict rules. No touching, no opening, no attempts to provoke whatever was inside. The group laughed nervously, but agreed. For hours, they sat in the dimly lit room, watching the box, waiting for something to happen. At first, nothing did. But then one of the researchers grew pale, clutching his stomach. He doubled over, vomiting onto the floor. Another began to shake violently, as though suffering from a seizure. The third swore she saw a shadow move across the wall, though no one else saw it. Jason ended the session immediately. He escorted them out, shaken, realizing that the Dybbuk box didn't need to be touched to unleash its power. After that night, word spread even further. The box became infamous, not just online, but in the paranormal community at large. Some called it a hoax. Others swore it was proof of evil made physical. And with every argument, with every story shared, the legend grew stronger. Jason himself was deteriorating. He developed chronic health problems, bleeding gums, skin rashes, migraines that left him bedridden. His family life suffered. He began to dream not just of the woman, but of entire scenes. A cold, damp cellar where people screamed in languages he couldn't understand. A child crying. The sound of boots on stone floors. Shadows pressing against walls that seemed too close, too tight. He wondered if the box carried not one spirit, but many. The Holocaust survivor who had owned it had fled Nazi-occupied Poland. She claimed the box had been made during a ritual involving several spirits angry, restless souls trapped together in the cabinet. That explained the locks of hair, the carved stone, the strange artifacts inside. They weren't random items. They were offerings, bindings. The thought chilled him. Maybe the Dybbuk box wasn't just haunted, it was a container. And if it ever truly opened, whatever had been bound inside would be set free. Jason became obsessed with protecting it. He reinforced the gold-lined case. He performed prayers, consulted with rabbis, burned sage. Nothing worked. The activity continued. The nightmares worsened. His children began to see things, two dark figures standing in their bedrooms, whispering in guttural voices. The stress was unbearable. Jason considered getting rid of it, but how? He had spoken to experts who warned him that destroying the box would release whatever was inside. Burying it would only delay the inevitable. It would eventually be found again. Giving it away felt like condemning another family to the torment he had endured. He was trapped. By 2011, the story of the Dybbuk Box reached national media. A popular television show about haunted objects approached Jason, begging for a chance to feature it. Against his better judgment, he agreed. Cameras were brought in, producers whispered about ratings, and the box was placed under bright studio lights for the world to see. Almost immediately, the crew began to experience problems. Cameras malfunctioned, audio cut out, lights blew. One crew member collapsed on set, claiming he felt as though something had crushed the air out of his lungs. When the episode aired, it terrified viewers. Thousands of people who had never heard of the Dybbuk Box now knew its name. And that was the real danger. The more people spoke of it, the more powerful it seemed to become. The legend spread like a virus, infecting minds across the country. Some swore that just seeing its picture online caused nightmares. Others claimed that reading its story made strange things happen in their homes, objects moving, whispers in the night, sudden illnesses. It was as if the Dybbuk Box wanted to be known, wanted to be remembered, wanted to spread. Jason, exhausted and broken, began to write a book about his experiences. He hoped that by telling the story, he might pass on some of the weight that had consumed his life. He finished the manuscript in 2011. By the time it was published, the Dybbuk Box was no longer just his burden. It belonged to the world, and the world was about to take it somewhere far darker than Jason could ever imagine. By 2012, the Dybbuk Box was no longer a secret whispered among paranormal enthusiasts. It had become a national fascination. Newspapers ran features about it, websites recounted its history, and television shows replayed the chilling interviews with Jason Haxton. The cursed cabinet had crossed into mainstream culture. That same year, Hollywood came calling. Lionsgate Films released The Possession, a horror movie inspired by true events, with Jeffrey Dean Morgan playing a father whose family is tormented by a cursed box eerily similar to Jason's in the movie. The spirit inside targeted a young girl, growing stronger until it had to be exorcised by a rabbi. Audiences were terrified. The marketing leaned heavily on the real Dybbuk Box legend. Articles connected the film to Haxton's story. And then came the reports from the set stories that only deepened the legend. Actors claimed strange things happened while filming, lights shattered without warning. Cold winds swept across closed sets. Morgan himself admitted he kept his distance from the actual Dybbuk Box, saying in interviews, "I didn't want it anywhere near me." Rumors spread of the fire that destroyed storage containing key props for the film, leading some to say the curse had followed them. Whether coincidence or something more, the movie's release made one thing certain. Millions of Americans now knew the name Dybbuk Box, and with that awareness came consequences. Jason Haxton received an avalanche of letters, emails, and phone calls. Some begged him to destroy the box. Others wanted to see it, touch it, even own it. A handful of people claimed the box was calling to them, as if they were meant to have it. Jason refused them all. He kept it hidden, sealed in its golden case, deep in storage. But keeping it hidden didn't mean it was silent. The nightmares continued. His health continued to falter. And now, strangers who had never touched the box reported similar experience, nightmares of the woman. The scent of ammonia, the sound of whispers in the night. It was as if the Dybbuk Box didn't need to be near someone to torment them anymore. The more famous it became, the wider its reach seemed to stretch. One night, Jason received a phone call from a man he didn't know. The voice on the other end was shaking. The man claimed he had seen a photo of the box online, and ever since, his life had unraveled. His wife had left him. His health had collapsed. He dreamed of a woman crouching beside his bed, whispering in his ear. He begged Jason to take it back, to do something to stop it. But Jason couldn't help him. He hung up, shaken, realizing the box had gone beyond containment. It was becoming something else, an idea, a curse that traveled through words, through images, through belief itself. And then came Las Vegas. In 2017, Jason transferred the Dybbuk Box into the hands of Zach Bagans, the host of Ghost Adventures and owner of the Haunted Museum in Las Vegas. Zach, fascinated by the most cursed items in the world, believed the box belonged in a controlled environment where its story could be preserved and studied. But moving it didn't silence it. Zach reported his own encounters immediately. Electronics failed in its presence. Guests to the museum collapsed, fainted, or left in tears after standing near its glass case. One woman screamed that she saw a face inside the reflection of the glass. Another swore she felt invisible hands pressing against her throat. When Zach attempted to open the box on camera during a Ghost Adventures episode, he and his crew claimed they experienced violent physical reactions, stomach pains, nosebleeds, a choking sensation that left them struggling to breathe. Afterward, he said the box's power was undeniable. The museum became a pilgrimage site. Thousands came to see the Dybbuk Box, to stand before it, to test themselves against the curse. Some left laughing, dismissing it as a clever attraction. Others left broken, convinced they had seen or felt something they couldn't explain. And yet, through all of this, one question remained unanswered. What was truly inside? Jason's research suggested the Holocaust survivor had trapped multiple spirits within the cabinet. Zach Bagans believed the box was a direct doorway, a portal that allowed entities to pass between worlds. Skeptics called it superstition, a legend exaggerated by fear and coincidence. But believers pointed to the trail of evidence: Kevin Manis's mother collapsing the day she opened it, Yosif's life unraveling, Jason's chronic illnesses, the nightmares shared by every single owner, the mysterious malfunctions on film sets and TV productions, the countless visitors who swore they had been touched by something inhuman. Was it all coincidence? Or was the Dybbuk Box feeding on attention, growing stronger every time its name was spoken, every time its story was told? By now, the box had become more than just a haunted object. It was a cultural icon of fear woven into American folklore, but folklore has a way of hiding the truth. And sometimes the truth is far darker than the stories we tell. Because if the Dybbuk Box wasn't just cursed, if it was truly a prison, then perhaps the real question was never about whether the curse was real. The real question was, what happens when the prison door finally opens? The nights grew heavier, as though the very air in Jason's house thickened with each passing hour. He tried to convince himself it was all in his mind, that the Dybbuk Box was simply an unlucky antique with a dark reputation, but the evidence against his own denial was piling up. He hadn't slept more than 2 hours in days. His body trembled with exhaustion, but his mind was restless, filled with sounds that didn't belong, and whispers that came from nowhere. One night, while lying half awake, Jason heard the unmistakable creak of his bedroom door. He shot upright, his breath caught in his throat. The door swung open slowly, revealing only the dim hallway beyond. Nobody was there. He stared for what felt like an eternity, his pulse hammering in his ears. Then, from the foot of his bed, he heard a sigh. A long, deep exhale. Jason switched on his lamp in a frenzy, but the room was empty. Still, he knew something had been there. By morning, he noticed bruises along his arms deep, finger-shaped impressions as if someone had gripped him hard in his sleep. The Dybbuk box sat silently in its glass case downstairs, its wooden surface glinting faintly in the morning light. Jason avoided looking at it too long, because each time he did, his vision blurred and he felt as though something inside was staring back. He decided to call Sarah, his sister, someone who always believed in more than what she could see. He hadn't wanted to involve her, but he could no longer carry the weight alone. When she arrived later that day, Sarah stepped into the house and immediately froze. "Jason, it feels wrong in here, heavy, like someone's watching." Jason laughed weakly. "Welcome to my life." He brought her to the Dybbuk box, and the moment her eyes landed on it, she gasped. "Why would you bring this into your house?" He told her about the auction, the strange allure, the nightmares, the scratches. Sarah crossed her arms, shaking her head. "You don't understand, Jason. Dybbuk isn't just a ghost. It's a restless spirit, one that clings, one that won't leave. Once it latches onto you, it drains you." Jason shivered. "So what do I do?" "There are rituals, prayers, but I don't know if you're ready for what that might stir up." That night, Sarah insisted on staying over. They slept in the same house for the first time in years. Around 2:30 a.m., the temperature plummeted. Jason awoke to the sound of Sarah screaming in the guest room. He rushed down the hall and found her standing on her bed, pointing at the corner. "There," she cried. "A man, Jason." He was standing there, just staring at me. Jason looked, but saw only shadows stretching up the wall. Still, the air was thick with a presence he couldn't deny. From downstairs, a deafening crash echoed glass shattering. They both bolted down to the living room and froze. The glass case that had contained the Dybbuk box was in pieces, shards scattered across the floor. The box itself sat wide open, its carved wooden lid leaning back as though someone had lifted it with great care. Sarah's hand clutched Jason's arm. "Oh my God, Jason, you never opened it, right?" His silence was enough of an answer. He remembered the night he touched it, when curiosity got the better of him, when he lifted the lid just a fraction before snapping it shut again. Sarah's eyes filled with fear. "You let it out." Suddenly, the lights flickered. The shadows in the room twisted unnaturally. Jason swore he saw something moving along the ceiling, crawling, but when he blinked, it vanished. Then, from the open box, a sound emerged, a low groan, like the last breath of someone dying. Jason's knees nearly buckled. Sarah whispered a prayer under her breath, but the sound only grew louder, as though mocking her words. The room turned icy. Jason's breath clouded the air, his teeth chattering. Then a whisper slithered into his ear, close, intimate, chilling, "Mine." Jason spun, but no one was there. Sarah was clutching across to her chest, her lips moving frantically. The Dybbuk box suddenly slammed shut with a violent crack. The sound was so sharp it rattled the windows, and then all was silent. They didn't move for what felt like hours. When Jason finally dared to step forward, he noticed something carved into the wood of the box that hadn't been there before. Deep gouges, as if fingernails had scraped across it from the inside. Sarah pulled him back. "We can't stay here." Not tonight, but Jason felt rooted, almost paralyzed. He couldn't leave, because in the silence that followed, one thought embedded itself in his mind like a hook. What if leaving doesn't matter? What if it follows us? Jason barely slept that night. Even though Sarah insisted they leave the house, he refused. Something inside him had changed, something that didn't want to run. Sarah sensed it too. She kept watching him with worried eyes, as if she saw something in her brother that wasn't entirely his own anymore. The next morning, Sarah convinced Jason to seek help. "We can't fight this ourselves," she said. "You need someone who understands, someone who knows how to deal with Dybbuks." After hours of calls, they finally reached a man named Rabbi Cohen, a scholar of Jewish mysticism. He sounded cautious on the phone, but agreed to come. "Don't touch the box until I arrive," he warned. When Rabbi Cohen entered Jason's house that evening, he immediately stiffened. "This place, it's been claimed." His voice was low, grave. He examined the shattered glass case, the closed Dybbuk box, the gouges on its surface. Then he turned to Jason. "Have you opened it?" Jason hesitated before nodding. Rabbi Cohen sighed heavily. "Then it has already attached itself. The box was never just a container, it was a prison. Opening it even slightly may have freed what was bound inside." Jason swallowed hard. "So what do I do?" The rabbi placed a small book of prayers on the table, along with candles and a silver cup of wine. "We will attempt a cleansing ritual. But understand, once a Dybbuk resists, it does so violently. You must not break, no matter what it shows you." As the ritual began, Sarah sat nearby, clutching a rosary despite being raised Catholic. Her whispered prayers mingled with the rabbi's Hebrew chants. Jason tried to steady his breathing, but the atmosphere thickened again, pressing against his chest. The candles flickered wildly, though no wind moved. Shadows on the walls stretched unnaturally long, twisting into shapes that almost resembled figures. Jason could swear one shadow smiled at him, teeth sharp and glistening in the dark. The rabbi's voice grew louder, commanding. He poured wine slowly around the Dybbuk box in a circle, chanting verses of protection. Jason's ears rang, his vision blurred. Then came the sound, the same groan as before, only deeper, angrier, vibrating the floor beneath them. The lid of the box rattled, slamming open and shut, like something inside was clawing its way out. Jason clutched his head, his mind flooding with voices. "Jason, you belong to me now. She can't save you. None of them can. All you have to do is stop fighting." Jason screamed, falling to his knees. Sarah rushed to him, but the rabbi barked, "Don't touch him, it's trying to use him as a vessel." Jason's body convulsed, his eyes rolled back until only the whites showed. A guttural sound escaped his throat, something that didn't belong to him. His voice layered, doubled, distorted. "You cannot take me from him. He is mine." Sarah sobbed, pressing the rosary to her lips. "Jason, fight it. Please, fight." The rabbi's chanting grew even louder, his voice unshaken. He sprinkled salt across the lid of the box, the words rolling like thunder. For a moment, Jason's body went limp. The whispers stopped. Then, without warning, every candle blew out. Darkness swallowed the room. Jason gasped and opened his eyes, panting. Is it over?" But the rabbi's expression told a different story. He shook his head. "It isn't gone. It's stronger than I expected. And now it knows we're trying to banish it." Before anyone could respond, a deafening crash shook the house. Upstairs, something heavy toppled over, followed by the sound of footsteps fast, running, too many for just one person. Sarah gripped Jason's arm. "There's someone up there," but they knew it wasn't someone, it was something. The rabbi clutched his book tighter. "It's trying to scatter us, to break our unity. Stay together." From the stairwell, a figure appeared, a dark silhouette of a man, taller than any of them, its limbs slightly too long, its head cocked unnaturally to the side. It stood in silence, watching. Jason froze, every instinct telling him to run, but his body wouldn't move. The rabbi began chanting again, holding up his book. The figure shrieked, a high-pitched wail that pierced Jason's ears. The lights exploded in a shower of sparks, plunging the house into chaos. In the strobe of flickering bulbs, Jason saw the figure dart forward, faster than thought, rushing toward him. He braced himself, but then it vanished, dissolving into smoke right before it reached him, Jason collapsed, trembling. What does it want? The rabbi's face was pale. It doesn't just want to haunt you, it wants to be you. If we fail, Jason, you won't be here anymore. Just it. Jason felt cold sweat run down his back. He looked at the box, now sealed, but throbbing with energy, as though its wooden frame was breathing. He realized something he hadn't dared admit before. It wasn't just that he opened the box. It was that a part of him wanted to, and that part was still there. Jason barely slept that night. Even though Sarah insisted they leave the house, he refused. Something inside him had changed, something that didn't want to run. Sarah sensed it too. She kept watching him with worried eyes, as if she saw something in her brother that wasn't entirely his own anymore. The next morning, Sarah convinced Jason to seek help. "We can't fight this ourselves," she said. "You need someone who understands, someone who knows how to deal with Dybbuks." After hours of calls, they finally reached a man named Rabbi Cohen, a scholar of Jewish mysticism. He sounded cautious on the phone, but agreed to come. "Don't touch the box until I arrive," he warned. When Rabbi Cohen entered Jason's house that evening, he immediately stiffened. "This place, it's been claimed." His voice was low, grave. He examined the shattered glass case, the closed Dybbuk box, the gouges on its surface. Then he turned to Jason. "Have you opened it?" Jason hesitated before nodding. Rabbi Cohen sighed heavily. "Then it has already attached itself." The box was never just a container, it was a prison. Opening it even slightly may have freed what was bound inside. Jason swallowed hard. "So what do I do?" The rabbi placed a small book of prayers on the table, along with candles and a silver cup of wine. "We will attempt a cleansing ritual. But understand, once a Dybbuk resists, it does so violently. You must not break, no matter what it shows you." As the ritual began, Sarah sat nearby, clutching a rosary despite being raised Catholic. Her whispered prayers mingled with the rabbi's Hebrew chants. Jason tried to steady his breathing, but the atmosphere thickened again, pressing against his chest. The candles flickered wildly, though no wind moved. Shadows on the walls stretched unnaturally long, twisting into shapes that almost resembled figures. Jason could swear one shadow smiled at him, teeth sharp and glistening in the dark. The rabbi's voice grew louder, commanding. He poured wine slowly around the Dybbuk box in a circle, chanting verses of protection. Jason's ears rang, his vision blurred. Then came the sound, the same groan as before, only deeper, angrier, vibrating the floor beneath them. The lid of the box rattled, slamming open and shut, like something inside was clawing its way out. Jason clutched his head, his mind flooding with voices. "Jason, you belong to me now. She can't save you. None of them can. All you have to do is stop fighting." Jason screamed, falling to his knees. Sarah rushed to him, but the rabbi barked, "Don't touch him. It's trying to use him as a vessel." Jason's body convulsed. His eyes rolled back until only the whites showed. A guttural sound escaped his throat, something that didn't belong to him. His voice layered, doubled, distorted. "You cannot take me from him. He is mine." Sarah sobbed, pressing the rosary to her lips. "Jason, fight it. Please fight." The rabbi's chanting grew even louder, his voice unshaken. He sprinkled salt across the lid of the box, the words rolling like thunder. For a moment, Jason's body went limp. The whispers stopped. Then, without warning, every candle blew out. Darkness swallowed the room. Jason gasped and opened his eyes, panting. Is it over?" But the rabbi's expression told a different story. He shook his head. "It isn't gone. It's stronger than I expected. And now it knows we're trying to banish it." Before anyone could respond, a deafening crash shook the house. Upstairs, something heavy toppled over, followed by the sound of footsteps fast, running, too many for just one person. Sarah gripped Jason's arm. There's someone up there, but they knew it wasn't someone. It was something. The rabbi clutched his book tighter. It's trying to scatter us, to break our unity. Stay together. From the stairwell, a figure appeared, a dark silhouette of a man. Taller than any of them, its limbs slightly too long, its head cocked unnaturally to the side. It stood in silence, watching. Jason froze, every instinct telling him to run, but his body wouldn't move. The rabbi began chanting again, holding up his book. The figure shrieked, a high-pitched wail that pierced Jason's ears. The lights exploded in a shower of sparks, plunging the house into chaos. In the strobe of flickering bulbs, Jason saw the figure dart forward, faster than thought, rushing toward him. He braced himself, but then it vanished, dissolving into smoke right before it reached him. Jason collapsed, trembling. What does it want? The rabbi's face was pale. It doesn't just want to haunt you. It wants to be you. If we fail, Jason, you won't be here anymore. Just it. Jason felt cold sweat run down his back. He looked at the box, now sealed, but throbbing with energy, as though its wooden frame was breathing. He realized something he hadn't dared admit before. It wasn't just that he opened the box. It was that a part of him wanted to. And that part was still there.